Okay, welcome everybody to this four-piece cafe. This week is the second session related to Creative Edge iC3D. This one specifically is going to focus on shrink sleeves. If you missed the last iC3D session 2 weeks ago, that was an introduction to like the whole application with focus on upcoming features. That one will be available on YouTube. So you can rewatch it there and catch up. Also, remember 2 weeks from now, I think, on September 30th, we have a third session on iC3D talking about automation. That's also definitely going to be very interesting. So mark your calendars and be sure to come to that one. In between, there is another coffee next week about Caldera. So this is actually as far as I need to go with the introduction. I'm going to hand it over to Joel. And as usual, this is a cafe. If you have anything to ask or anything to say during the session, feel free to put it in chat or speak up and we'll handle chat. We'll make sure that your questions are answered. Okay, Joel, the stage is yours. Have fun.
Okay, thank you. Hi, and welcome to today's session. I'm going to basically give you a brief introduction of iC3D and what it's about. And then I'm going to give you a demo mainly focused around shrink and shrink film creation, which is what today's subject is about. But I'm just going to give you a little flavor of what iC3D does holistically as well when we get into the demo phase. So my name is Joe Weiner. I'm the product support manager here for EMEA region at Creative Edge Software, the manufacturer of iC3D Suite. So just to begin with, talk to you a little bit about visualization and 3D rendering within the software market. So just-in-time marketing, advertising, and cost reductions are what is driving 3D rendering software market right now. And 3D delivers a visual effect that generates a perception of depth, and the viewers get an enriched 360-degree viewing experience of that image or 3D model in a virtual world. And the 3D software market is, the size is expected to grow by the end of next year from 1.6 to 2.92 billion over a 5-year kind of case study. So what does that mean? Photorealistic 3D rendering software helps during the stages of prototyping for designers and stakeholders so they can really see a realistic picture of how the design will actually turn out. This is where iC3D comes into its own. So if you're not entirely sure what iC3D is basically the first real-time packaging solution that enables you to generate 3D packaging mock-ups very quickly and easily, including items like cardon labels, flexibles, bottles, tins, point-of-sale items, shrink wraps, on-shelf and in-store product visualization. Basically everything that image conveys on my screen now and more. So everything you see there would be possible to create within iC3D and has been. Okay, so where does iC3D sit in the packaging value chain? Well, as you can see, at the start, we have CPG and brand owners using our tools, then design services, trade shops, packaging and label printers, converters, and then co-packers. And underneath here where these logos are, these are some of our customers that are using iC3D right now, right today, and there are more. And it just shows you where they sit within that value chain. So people are using our shrink tools like Diageo, one of the largest drinks manufacturers globally. They use iC3D in their design hub in the US. They're about to mirror that capability over here in the UK. But they basically use iC3D as part of the ideation phase for creating the new shape of bottles and things like that, as well as the artwork and the labeling side of things. So they kind of do a kind of end-to-end process for designing everything that goes into that bottle or the box that a bottle goes in, or the shrink film that goes around the top of the bottle caps and necks and things like this. Then we have actual shrink manufacturers like Sun Branding Solutions. They're one of the largest shrink manufacturers here in the UK. Also globally, CCL Labels. I know they're called CCL Labels, but they have a huge shrink division. and they have that globally, and we have our software in about 3 of those locations, one in the UK, one in Germany. They also have one in Oman, in the Middle East there. Okay, and then obviously we have converters, co-packers like Cyber Graphics and things like that at this end of the supply chain. And again, they use our shrink tools inside there. Okay, so it just gives you an idea of where we sit and where our shrink tools might be used within that value chain. So finished print-ready imagery is what is produced out of iC3D, photographic quality imagery. It's quick and easy to create any 3D models. And as I said earlier, bottles, bags, cartons, cans, shrink films, containers, and point-of-sale items. All those examples, these little images that you see popping up on my screen now, have all been created using a range of tools within iC3D. Okay, and as you can see here on the far left, multi-pack of bottles with shrink film around the outside is what we're going to be focusing on today. Okay, so all of those have been generated using iC3D, and we have some beautiful kind of photographic quality imagery of those models that have been created. Okay, so as I said, we can generate beautiful photographic realistic 3D images on the fly. Any packaging designer can learn iC3D. It just takes a couple of days to generate something like the image you see on the left-hand side of my screen now. It's literally 2.5 to 3 full days of training, and I can have someone producing something similar to what you see on the screen there. Okay, so 3D photorealistic visuals are becoming a norm, and especially for ray tracing, which is obviously photographic quality, is the term or the technology behind that. It's great for things like spirits, glass, liquids, foils, and they all look fantastic. Similarly to everything that's conveyed in that image on the left there. Okay, you see the foil label, the foil blocking on the label, you see the label itself, the texture on the labels, and the liquids and things in there, and a metallic cap and things. Okay, so that leads me on to kind of start talking about iC3D and our shrink templates and the type of shrink films that we can generate. So we have a shrink film template that will generate models like you see in the imagery that's popped up on my screen now, whether it's kind of asymmetric items that need to have a shrink film placed around it, like the trigger spray bottle on the left, or if it's like a multi-pack, like the 6-pack of water bottles that you see there. It has a shrink around the middle there, a bit of film around the middle for the labeling area, and then a multi shrink cover on the outside to hold all the bottles together. Okay, so we can produce any of those permutations. And then I'll also be talking to you about our sealed shrink template as well. So the sealed shrink template in the top right corner there, you see those chickens. It's inside that sealed shrink bag. We can produce, and we are the only company that has this niche technology to be able to create fully sealed shrink bags around items like you find around cheeses and meats in a supermarket, and I'll also be demonstrating that capability. And with those tools, we also have plugins for production purposes, which I'll explain in more detail later. Okay. So what are the benefits of using our shrink tools? Speed. It's incredibly fast to create a shrink, a very complex looking shrink. We can do it in minutes and seconds and minutes compared to competitor products that might take a lot longer, hours, if not days, to achieve the same production ready 2D files. Accuracy. Our shrink templates are incredibly accurate. They've been produced with some of the largest shrink manufacturers here in the UK. I've done a lot of rigid testing with them, and effectively, if you have all the correct settings put in our shrink templates, then it will be incredibly accurate to what's being produced. And those settings would generally come from the shrink manufacturer themselves to match to, and that's how we know that we've got a high level of accuracy using these tools. No specialist skills needed. It actually creates de-skidding. Things like this little image here, it shows you creating the pre-distorted artwork on the 2D art, which we'll look at shortly in the live demonstration. Historically, a shrink production house would pay a specialist, distortion specialist, to calculate these manually. the level of distortion needed on their art. But obviously we've taken that kind of skill level away and given it back to the traditional 2D art worker or operator, if you like. At a click of a button, and you'll see that shortly being demonstrated. Obviously, it's easy to create these pre-distorted art for production purposes, as I've just stated. Leaves no more guesswork because it's accurate based on the measurements of the actual shrink as well as the actual model it's going on. And we'll talk about that in the live demonstration. It then leads to fewer test prints, shorter lead times. And then we can also use it as a verification tool. We can check the print finishing effects on those shrink films. We can use it for approval purposes, and it helps avoid rejected print runs. And we can also obviously use it as an extra sales tool in our arsenal. Okay. So time to kind of sit back and show you how some of these tools work. And I'll be focusing, as I said today, on our shrink film and our sealed shrink. But the first thing I want to do is just to give you a flavor, if you wasn't in our last session, of what iC3D can do, just a quick kind of 8-minute demonstration overview. So I'll just begin with our demonstration, unless there's any questions from the floor before I begin. Okay.
Nothing yet in chat, so go ahead.
Okay, fantastic. So just as I said, I'm just going to give you a little flavor of what iC3D is about, and you'll see a lot of the kind of features with just kind of a little small demo of the holistic tool to start with. So you see here in the middle, I have what we call a ray traced image or a photographically correct image that is built from or created from the OpenGL viewpoint you see in my bottom left-hand corner here. Okay, so that's what we use for construction purposes, OpenGL, which is more computer gaming technology like you'll find on an Xbox or a PlayStation, where this is actually photographically correct imagery that we are producing from our ray tracing technology. And we have one of the fastest ray tracers on the marketplace, if not the fastest, with our latest technology enhancements. So just to begin with, iC3D is an out-of-the-box solution that enables you to create 3D digital packaging mockups while seamlessly linking to tools like Illustrator to have a live link to that production tool. Just going to demonstrate this very crudely, just by changing the color that you saw on that bottle in iC3D from the orange to a yellow color. You'll see it update in real time on the OpenGL model first, and then a couple of seconds using our real-time ray tracing technology, which means I can then use for design purposes to see what colors might look like for different variations, or from a design perspective, from a design decision perspective. Maybe it's different special effects I want to see, but I can see that instantly from a photographic standpoint, pretty much as it would be in reality. So just as a starting point, I'm going to start and build this whole image from start to finish back to you, just to show you some of our tools before we dive into the shrink aspects of today. Okay, so I'm just going to start a new document. And the first thing that we're going to do here is create that background image that you can see in that bottom left corner, which is the photographic image for now. Switch my viewpoints out for building purposes or construction purposes of the 3D model. So we're going to start with a dynamic background. A dynamic background allows me to merge my 2D imagery with 3D models. So actually creating another level of reality, or for marketing, pack shot purposes or things like this. So I'm just going to create that and call that barrels today. That would add that to the background of my scene. That's the first thing we do. Okay, so I have my background image that you see there. I'm then going to construct the bottle. And as it's an elliptical shaped bottle, we need to use our shape modeler template to do that. We have other rapid modeling creation tools to create a variety of different flexible bags that you can see there, these templates, which are slightly different. I'll just show you, like if I was to create like a packet of chips or crisps. A pillow bag is actually an editable 3D model that you'd come in here and you just put in your artwork width and height, and that's it. That's your model created. So that's all these flexible bags that you see. We also have tools like for CAD data for creating cylindrical items very quickly, carton fold up items if you're creating any folded carton structure or cardboard structure. We have custom shape, any shape SU pouches that you can create, and variety of different flexible bags, gusseted bags, multi-wall bags, quadra-gusseted sachets, shape bag for actually adding the content shape inside, like a packet of crisps or a packet of biscuits or a pack of chocolate or something like that, as well as tubes and tie top bags, blister packs we can create on the fly and things like that. But in this case, we need to use the shape modeler. The shape modeler will allow me to pretty much create 95% of the shapes I'd want to create in a 3D world. And it's not using that traditional wireframe method. This is our niche way of modeling, and it's designed for traditional 2D operators to get their head around and move into a 3D space very quickly and easily. Used to be a thought that there was a black art on this kind of thing, but we make this very simple. It's basically stacking 2D shapes that you create in Illustrator, export them as a DXF file, and you can import those little shapes that you see at the bottom there inside here within iC3D. And just to give you a little flavor of how they work, like this cog shape, you can stack them on top of each other. So if I wanted to create like a solid cog shape, I just stack those shapes directly on top of each other. So I'm going to show you how quickly it is to actually model something in reality. We're going to use our elliptical bottle. So I need to add a background image that makes modeling even easier. So we can trace around that actual image file. Okay, so I can just scale that up to whatever size I want the bottle to be in reality. So I'm just going to move the image to the left a little bit, and then I'm just going to scale it up to size that I need it. Okay, so 98.71. And then I'm just going to okay that, zoom out a little bit, move this guy up to the top here so we can get a better viewpoint. So now I can start constructing that actual bottle, and it's made out of two shapes. So if I looked at that from an overhead view, and from the base, it would be basically an elliptical shape, and at the very top, a circular shape. So from two shapes, we just click and drag them around the artboard here, and then we can start constructing our model very quickly and easily and drag these things into position just by tracing around this image. So I can add another couple of these elliptical shapes, maybe one more at the top here. And now I can start working with my circular shape at the top. And then I can zoom in very easily to get a better viewpoint on this kind of thing for construction purposes. And I can just add another couple of circular shapes. Very quick, very easy to do once you get your head around it. What we're seeing here on the left-hand side of the screen is basically a cross section. So if I was to effectively cut this bottle in half, yeah, that I'm seeing on the 3D view, this is what I'd view on the right here. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this one down to here, and then two more circular shapes, and then we can just smooth out our edges, and then our bottle is pretty much finished and created. Okay, so I'll just drag these around to here. I can then move between 2 points as well, these two, and then I can obviously make them a curved edge very quickly just by dragging, using a different tool and dragging it out to give me like a nice smooth curved edge. And then just to kind of finish this guy off, I just zoom in at the bottom. And as I said, I have created quite a complex looking model shape within like a minute or two, if that. Okay, so I can just add some nice curved edges here and here to finish off. All right, and now if you do have the CAD drawing, which you may well have, then you can make it even more accurate using the wire width and depth coordinates for each shape at each part of the cross section that they're supposed to be in. Okay, so you can create them very accurately. Y is the height from the base upwards, and width and depth is obviously what they are, say, on the tin. So then I can smooth this model out. I can then add it to the scene. So once it's nice and smooth, there's our finished bottle. I can add that to my scene, and then I can continue on with creating the rest of my bottle. So there's our bottle generated. I just can move it into position there, just zoom it into place. I can put a glass material that I've already created up front by clicking and dragging it on here. Next, we can use our interior and fill template. So when we're looking at ray tracing things, we have to add an interior wall and the liquid inside. So it creates the right levels of refraction and reflection needed to create that photographic image from. Okay, so the height from the bottom here, I'm putting in, if it's a thick based base on a spirit bottle or a luxury spirit bottle with perfume, that's how you would put a thicker base in the wall, left to right. Is the bottom corner, is it squared off at the bottom flat? Is it contoured, following the contours of the bottle, angled or curved? We'll just use the contours. This radius would be on your CAD drawing. So we'll just put in 4 mil for now. And then iC3D will automatically build the interior wall for you. I could have done that in that shape modeler, but why waste another 2-3 minutes tracing around the inside and putting in the right measurements all the way around? It'll probably take you maybe 5 or 10 minutes once you start putting in the correct measurements symmetrically around. When in 30 seconds, I can model that inside wall. I can now work on the liquid detail, the fill point depth, where I'm putting the liquid from the top down inside the bottle. And then in here, I'm looking inside my material library, and I'm saying I want it to be that particular whiskey. At the moment, with the interior wall, it's calculated the maximum amount of liquid that will now fill inside that bottle. This was actually Diageo, who I mentioned earlier, that wanted this requirement when they're designing their latest bottles. And then once I put in the liquid, which it's automatically building that model piece for me as I'm speaking, but also calculate the volumetric data of the fill or the liquid inside. So now I've added that part's done. I can now start working on that embossed element you see here on the image. So I can come in here and I can add a label. I'm going to use the label as like a stamp, if you like, and that'll become more apparent what I'm doing as I go through this. So I add a label, the size that I need my embossed elements to be. Using our patented label sliding technology, I can move that label anywhere on the bottle. That's because it's not UV mapped to the actual bottle itself. We also have a PDF editor built in the tool, so I don't have to use Illustrator if I don't have it. I can use a PDF workflow here as well. So I'm going to just place in my PDF of my actual embossed elements for this particular piece of my model. So there's my embossed elements. It has to be set up as a spot cutter for this to work. I just send that data back to iC3D, and it instantly maps that artwork on there, same as it does with Illustrator, okay, which I'll go back to in a minute. So we come into our layers panel. There's a spot cutter inside that file. So I grab that spot cutter and I just give it a material effect. Doesn't matter what that material is for now, it's just to being able to create those embossed elements. So it can be anything for now. So I'm just going to grab an aluminium or something like that. Okay, so it's done that. It changes the material. And incidentally, that's the way that you would create any material effect, whether it's embossing, varnishing, or anything like this. I'll just give it a bump depth of 1 or more to be able to engage with the bump displacement template. And then I'll select it again and drag the bump displacement template out onto the scene. Okay, so you see this viewpoint here. I can either apply the emboss, deboss data to the actual bottle, the mesh underneath the label it's saying there, or I can actually place it directly on the label. I want to place this directly on the model's mesh. This becomes part of that model, hard encoded data into that model's mesh, and it will then allow me to actually 3D print the bottle directly from iC3D, and it would also include those emboss or deboss areas that I'm about to kind of show you now. So I'm going to create that realistically. Obviously, if I was to do this as deboss and I'd put a negative value at the top, I'm displacing this or pushing it out by 1 millimeter. The mesh smoothness is how smooth the transition is between the original bottle and the new elements I'm creating. And also the edge smoothness, how sharp. 0 is extremely sharp edged, whereas 25% is more rounded. And you'll see that as I create that embossed effect on the glass. So that does all that modeling automatically for me based on that Illustrator artwork. Okay, so that's the embossing done. I can save that back to my model. I can then move this label around to the back, and then I could repeat that process, or because I'm now finished with it, I can simply just delete this as it's a stamp and I'm finished with that. So to finish this guy off, I'm just going to effectively add another label to this, which will become my graphic element. I'm just going to switch back to Illustrator for this, just to show you we can easily switch between the two. So I'm going to add a second label, and this label size here is going to be 245 by 100 mils. Okay, so it's 100% accurate to whatever we're placing on that bottle. I'm going to link that back to Illustrator on this occasion, and it will open up a 100% scaled document of that label inside Illustrator here. So I'm just going to open up another artwork file that I have, which is going to contain my actual graphical label elements. I'm just going to copy and paste it across. But before I do that, I just want to show you that within iC3D, we send over two artwork layers when we're talking about labels. There's one that contains the artwork and then one that contains a cutout shape. So any shape, any color on this layer will perform a die cut operation out of that larger kind of artboard or label area that you see there. So I'm just going to copy and paste that across. Okay, just nudge it in a little bit to where I need it, and then update that back to iC3D. And then you'll see in real time that will perform that die cut operation that I was just talking about. We can then accurately position the label using the label settings tools inside here, label alignment tools, whereas before I clicked and dragged it manually. So we can also position things exactly where we want them. It might be left to right, 250 mil, and then -395 down the bottom. And I can apply that. Okay, so it sits in the right place. And you can see there is an angled label, and that's intentional as that product is exactly like that on the shelves. We also have a model library in iC3D that comes with about 200 pre-shipped models to get you started. There's things like beer bottles. Maybe if you're a label printer or something like this, you just want to see what latest label design looks like on a beer bottle, standard one. We have standards in there. You might want to see what a shrink wrap might look like around the top edge of a actual spirit bottle, just to show a customer, but you don't actually want to build the spirit bottles. We have spirit bottles in there, as well as many other things like jars and cups and cosmetic items, caps, closures, all to choose from. Or it acts as like an asset library. I can also use this as all my bullet project assets as well. And I can store those model pieces in here. I might have a generic cork that I might have on every bottle. I might have a generic shrink wrap that I can drag in on every bottle that I'd already created once. So why bother doing it again? I can just store it as an asset. And then might want to put a glass in the scene with some ice in it. And then here we have a preset camera angles. We have all the GS1 standards in here that you can choose from, as you can see here. But I've got a specific one for this specific project. So I'm just going to go and choose my bullet bottle camera angle, and then I have a specific lighting. Again, you can generate this lighting rig, which it was originally generated in that dynamic backgrounds feature that I showed you at the start. You can click a button and it automatically revolves the 2D image into a 360 spherical environment. So you can correctly light the model back in the scene with the lighting from the original background image we used. And that is pretty much how all of that is built from start to finish. Then we can just ray trace that. As you can see, I've now got the orange label back on here, okay? Just to see what that might look like. So that just gives you a little flavor of what iC3D is all about, really. Rapid prototyping of 3D packaging mockups. So now we're going to kind of concentrate more on the shrink areas and show you how some of those shrink tools work today. So the first thing I'm going to show you is building a single can with a shrink around the outside for the art. And then I'm going to place a shrink around the outside. So we're going to create a multi-pack of these particular cans or drinks. So it's an iced tea drink. We're just going to drag a can from the model library, standard can. We're going to use our shrink template, and the two I'm going to be showing you, we have two, which is open-ended shrink film, as well as sealed shrink films as well, or shrink bags if you like. So I'm going to drag the shrink film into the scene once I selected the model I want to use it on. We have here basic setup or advanced setup. Advanced setup would be in a scenario that you are the print production house for shrink, or the shrink manufacturer, or you're in talks with that shrink manufacturer and they'll give you industry standard terminology like cut lengths, lay flat lengths, offsets, long lap direction, long lap lengths, short lap lengths. We can also customize the shrink substrate to match what's going on in the heat and shrink tunnels. Whether we think, well, not think, they'll tell you what percentage that they know that a shrink, or expect the shrink to actually shrink down on the cut length. In this case, it would be top to bottom on this example that you see here on this green band, or again on the lay flat, left to right. And then which way is it more pulling more towards the tension bias? Is it more towards left to right on the cut lay flat length, or more top to bottom on the cut length? If you get all these accurate details of the shrink manufacturer, or you are that shrink manufacturer, then we know that this is creating a 100% accurate model based on reality. Okay. So for this example, I'm going to start with the basic. We can wrap things either horizontally or vertically as well. Obviously, vertical would be the correct choice for this model type. So inside here, I put in my cut length details, which is top to bottom effectively. If I was to lay it flat, would be the height, I suppose, of your artwork. The film length here, again, is the width, overall width of the flat cut sheet, 166. I'm going to offset it by 375. Oh, sorry, this one here. And then I'm going to place a overlap or a seam, if you like, of 3.5 millimeters. Okay, and that's simulated by this kind of thicker green band you see at the back, and that can be moved anywhere depending on where it is in the manufacturing process. And this is from 0 to 180 degrees around the object. Okay, from one side to the other. So once
does it help to make the film length bigger than the object itself? But if you use best fit, it fits exactly around the mesh, right?
It will calculate what it thinks is the best fit around some variables that we've coded in there, but that sometimes isn't quite the case when it goes on a certain production line.
Okay, so you make it slightly bigger and then it shrinks to the finished length anyway.
Exactly. Okay. So, well, the starting point is if you unraveled that and laid it flat on a table, that would be what your cut length is left to right. Yeah. And then your cut height of that sheet that goes around that bottle or can or whatever it's going around.
Cool.
Okay. No problem. So once you've set all that detail, you just start the simulation off. Once it grabs the sides, you just stop it. You can add that to the scene. You then link that back to Illustrator or using the PDF editor. But to be fair, if you're using the shrink tools, you need Illustrator because that's where our plugins lie, which I'll show you in a minute for pre-distortion. So unless you do that pre-distortion first and then add the PDF to the PDF editor later. So there's that option as well. So I'm going to place an artwork inside here for this guy. So this is our artwork for our can. Okay, so then we'll update that back to iC3D. There's our finished can of our one-up. Okay, you can see all the way around that. I'm just going to group them, similar to what you would do inside Illustrator. It just makes it easier for me to manipulate. I'm going to turn off the artwork on here, just so I don't have to link all the artworks of 6 of these when I create them in a minute back to Illustrator, which will just speed up demo purposes and save it all in memory, things like that. So we have an artwork manager tool in there for that purpose. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to now duplicate that can. I'm going to create 6 of these very quickly using our duplication tool. So a 3x2 pack, which is my 6-pack of cans. So now I have 6 of these. And then obviously I'm going to now put my outer shrink around them. I just use the same tool again, drag that out onto the scene. And then again, I can choose the right direction of wrap. In this case, it's horizontal this time. And then I'll put in my cut length again, which is left to right this time. Reverses the dimensions effectively. 530 would be my film length. My overlap in this case, or seam, is 31 mil. And then I can position that exactly where I need it just by using this slider. Once you get the hang of this, it's pretty easy to get to where you want, or you can overtype it if that's quicker for you. Okay. And then we can come in here and then I can change the quality to speed things up of this. Obviously, I lose a bit of quality on it, but just for demonstration purposes. It would just be probably another minute maybe if I did that high quality, but I just don't want to leave you guys sitting there for like 2 minutes while it shrinks down. We have the fastest and most accurate shrink tool in the marketplace. Ours will sit completely flat on the top. If you see it from the front view, you see there's no bobbling or points on top or anything like that. It will sit completely flat on the top and on the sides. Okay, so that's how we know A, it's the fastest tool, and B, it's the most accurate tool inside there as well for shrink production. So we just let that finish shrinking, another couple of seconds just to hit the side wall of those cans. So we're about done. It checks it for its integrity. We know it's going to work, and then we can add that to the scene as well. I can come in here, I can grab a material that I might already have for my outer shrink, drag that on there. I can link this back to Illustrator. I get my 2D cutter guide of my shrink areas. There's the sill area or the seam area, if you like, that I specified on there. I'm going to open up a vector artwork because it has to be vector art for this to work anyway. So I'm going to grab my outer shrink art. I'm just going to copy and paste it across just so you can see all of this happening in real time. And then I'm just going to update that back to iC3D. So we'll just wait for that art to update, and then I'll explain a few things that we need to kind of fix on our shrink. So you see here, we have these back text panels, and in some respect, this actual logo area is very heavily distorted, okay? So we need to go back to Illustrator. We need to select the problematic areas, and then we need to basically pre-distort it on the 2D artwork. So when we send it back to that 3D model, it will correctly undistort, okay? So I'm going to select all of these areas. We can do that all in one hit. Smaller areas, generally the consensus here. Can't really do the whole shrink in one hit, but you have to do it in chunks for it to calculate. And what it will do is it will go off to iC3D because it's bidirectionally linked to the model. And as you saw within a couple of seconds, it will use some very clever algorithms to accurately predict the level of distortion needed on the 2D art. And this now becomes my live production file. Obviously, I would repeat that on the other areas, but just to show you on the back here. And then I update this back to iC3D. This is now my live production file. And we'll just let that update in real time. You'll see it correctly undistort on the 3D model. And this is what I was saying earlier about using this as a verification tool. There you see, it's already done that for me. These are nice and straight now, as they should be. And this isn't distorted, it's just where it's going in and out of the actual cans that you see there, because the shrink's stuck to the sides there. Okay, so we use this as a verification tool to make sure what we see here matches what we get back from the production house. Now, if all of those settings are correct that we've put in, there is no reason why it won't be what you receive back. And if it isn't, then you know that the printer has a problem. Okay, so or they can use it as their own verification tool as well. So we'll just add another camera preset here to finish this one off. Just grab my iC3D camera angle. I can grab a specific lighting effect that I've got for this guy. And then I can see what that might look like as a photographically correct image as well. So all the time we're working in this reality, this photographic correctness of anything that we produce, whether it's shrink films, bottles, labels, whatever. And hopefully, as you'll agree, that's very realistic looking shrink film around the outside of those cans. So you know, customers can see exactly what they're going to receive back. It's as close as you'd get without receiving the actual physical sample. And especially in today's world crisis with pandemics, where we can't all meet up and things and actually grab physical items and share them, we can share this globally, but around clients, customers, prospects on their screens, on Zoom calls, things like that, with some of our export options. So next I'm going to show you how we go about creating an asymmetric shape shrink or a shrink film around an asymmetric shaped bottle. It's going to be like a trigger spray bottle, the one that I showed you in my slides at the start. So I'm just going to open up my next file for this. It's my trigger spray bottle. It doesn't have anything around it at the moment. It's just a nice bottle. And incidentally, this was created in iC3D as well. Everything you see there. The first thing I need to do is I need to obviously rotate this bottle. Now, it's that close to the simulation of how things work. We have to actually rotate depending on what shrink film we're using and how it was designed and how it goes down a heat and shrink tunnel. So I need to actually grab this guy. I need to rotate it in the same degrees angles of what I would if I was putting it on the actual production line for shrinking. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to move this 334 in that direction. So minus 26 degrees. And then I can then select that. I can then drag out the shrink template. Okay. And then I'm going to actually use the advanced setup. So we're going to do this exactly as you would do from a CAD drawing. I'm just going to open that CAD drawing so you can see exactly that this matches 100%. from an accuracy standpoint as I do this, okay? I'm just going to open up my artwork file in the background. We're going to use it anyway. But just to show you, obviously I have my film design here, okay? This one, you can see it specifies a lay flat area on here, which we're going to use. It specifies the long lap area, and the short lap area is what we're interested in, as well as the cut length or the height, if you like, okay? So those are the details that we're going to use off this CAD drawing to create our shrink from. So again, inside here, we go to our advanced setup. Our cut length here is 218, as specified on that CAD drawing. Our lay flat area was 181, as specified again on the CAD drawing. The offset is -3, as specified on this. Sorry, I didn't point that out, but it is. I can show you in a minute. The long lap direction is on the right-hand side for this one. Our long lap length is 151.02, as specified there. You see it also tries to calculate, but it's very minimally out because my short lap needs to be 29.91. Okay, I can then shrink that using our default vertical shrink sleeve asymmetric for asymmetric shapes. If I don't have the actual substrate detail that I explained to you earlier, but this one will work 100% anyway in this case. And then you will just watch it shrink around very quickly around the asymmetric shape at the bottom. And that's why it's been offset, as it would be in reality, because it has to clench onto the base of the bottle to actually hang on there somehow. And that's why we offset that as well. Okay, so it's pretty much done within 20 seconds to accurately shrink that down at high quality. So once it's done that, we can add it to our scene. Okay, I can then link this back to Illustrator. Again, I get 100% scale cutter guide open inside Illustrator. As you can see there, all of the details that I've added in. I'll just go back to our other artwork and I'll copy and paste that across. And I'll show you how accurate it is by pasting this exactly in the right place. Edge to edge, top to bottom. Just need to grab the edge of our cutter, just down here. And then just drag that into position. Which goes here. It's like a 1 mil bleed on that. And as you can see, edge to edge, where the cutter guide is sitting, this side to this side, just turn that off there so you can see it. Okay, and top to bottom. So it fits 100% accurately inside here. I can then switch off that cutter guide layer, and then I can update that back to iC3D. Actually, I'll leave the cutter on for now because we're going to show you the distortion on that in a slightly different way. I just want you to see how accurate that is, actually mapping that onto the final model. So I'll just let that update here. And as you can see, if I zoom in exactly from the CAD drawing, it matches that 100%. That's dead center, that line matches. You can see there's a embossed ridge there, if you like, on the model. That's pretty much in exactly the right place. The center seam is there where it should be in the center on that side. Okay, it just shows you the level of accuracy that we are achieving here. So I'll just go back to the art, and then obviously I need to turn off the cutter. I'm going to create some distortion on here, or pre-distortion, I should say. Just going to select these areas here, and this guy and this one can all be done in one hit. And then again, we use envelope distort, make with mesh. A 10 by 10 mesh sorts out most distortion. And this one's going to be a front view. Okay, same as before. And I'm going to use that setting for another couple that goes on this. So I'm going to select that image just to show you we can also do image files. Again, envelope distort, make with mesh. Images take a little bit longer just to calculate because it has to obviously figure out all the distortion of the whole image rather than the vector art, which is a bit more simpler to calculate. Not much more complex, just takes a few seconds longer, as you can see there. And then we'll just apply that one. And again, it will take about 10, 15 seconds just to go back to iC3D. It tells you what it's doing here in our little plugin window and on the screen once it's finished distorting that. All right. On the side here, I'm going to distort these areas again as a front view. And this one will be very quick to do. Again, as it's some vector art. Then we've got two more areas that I want to kind of distort or pre-distort. This one here, again, is a front view, and I'll explain the last one when we get to that in a couple of seconds. So if we go back to the actual live model, you see here this element, some of that text is going across this side as well as that front side. Okay, so it's effectively it's going across two edges or two sides. So with that, we do the same process. We just choose a different option. We have two options effectively within our shrink distortion tools inside here. We do a bidirectional step. Effectively, it's going bidirectionally into two directions. So we'll calculate the distortion for it, for viewing it from both those directions. So now we've done all of our distortion. This becomes our live production file again. We can update that back to iC3D, and then we should see some nice undistorted artwork on our final bottle. Okay, all nicely undistorted in those areas where it was heavily distorted. And then we can then apply our final material. So there's my shrink film for this one. Look at it from the front view, and then we can use some lighting inside here. And then we can see again what that might look like as a fully photographic quality imagery. Let's move that into a better viewpoint for you guys to see. Okay, so there's our final model there. Very accurate, very realistic looking, hopefully you'd agree. Okay, so that leads me to kind of my final subject point and final kind of miniature demo inside our shrink templates for today. So I'm going to start with my model library, and I'm going to drag, we're going to create that kind of chicken image, the image of all those chickens that I showed you on my slides as well. So I'm going to drag in here a single chicken. I'm just going to change the viewpoint. I'm now going to drag out my sealed shrink template into the scene to put a bag around this chicken. I'm going to change my bag width. This again would be based on CAD data that you would receive from a CAD drawing. I'm going to put in my height on my bag, which is 345.50. I'm then going to change my seals from straight to curve. So that's exactly what I would be in manufacturing process for this particular bag. I'm going to put in a 7.5 mil top and bottom seal, and then it doesn't have any seals on the left or right side. You can add them. You can also add rear seals in here as well if you're doing like a cheese pack or something like that. But we'll leave it as it is. We're going to place the item in the bag. It just takes a minute or so just to calculate all of that for me and add it in the bag and pump it for the there around the item. So it's just calculating that for me. It just takes a few more seconds, as you can see. So we're almost there. And what you'll see is a nice air-filled bag around the actual chicken there. And then we can start a simulation. It will start off slowly, but then it will speed up as it gets kind of closer. So again, it just depends on your graphics card, in your computer, how fast this will actually go and how fast the user experience is. And also, as I'm screen sharing, it will take a little bit longer. But if you just bear with me for another 30 odd seconds or so, and that will shrink down. It will start to speed up. So is there any questions while it kind of goes through that process? But I just want to show you this technology. Again, this is niche technology. Nobody else on the 3D market can produce these sealed shrink bags in a 3D world. We're the only company that does that. As I said, it's patented technology. And again, we have the shrink distortion tools that we use with the live Illustrator art if you need to pre-distort them on these bags as well. So generally, because I am screen sharing, sorry, I didn't realize it would take quite as long sharing screen. When I do it not sharing, it's a lot quicker on this machine. So just bear with me while it kind of finishes the shrink process. It's almost there anyway. As you can see, you can shrink it down right around the edge of the object inside the bag, whether it's a meat or a cheese or whatever it is. You can stop at any point as well for different kind of effects. If you wanted it to be a bit looser in this area, then obviously you can stop that sooner. But we'll just let it shrink a little bit more to the edge. It's pretty much done. It will completely sit flat, and then obviously it depends how you want these seals to kind of behave as well. So that's probably about right. We'll just stop that. We'll add that to our scene. Okay, we'll link this to Illustrator. Again, we get a 100% scaled document of the 2D cutter guide open of that bag shape. And then I'm just going to open up my artwork for this one. And I can copy that across. Oh, just get rid of that. Okay, so I'll just position that where I need it. It's around about there is fine for me. Just make that so it's level. Drag that down to the bottom a little bit. Okay, so then we're happy with that position, and we just update that back to iC3D. Again, I'm not going to go through the process of doing this. This is exactly the same distortion tool. So if I wanted to undistort that badge or that text, which it doesn't need on this, it's quite forgiving in this way, but I could go and fix the distortion on that. I can use the same plugins it's treated. I'll just do it on the one artwork element for now. But effectively, I can come in here and change that to match as well. So it's decided to crash for some reason. But yeah, once we've done the distortion, the final thing to do on this is to come in here and I can add some other flavors to the scene that I've already created. Again, in my asset library. And then on some other variations. And then I might also want to come in here and add maybe a floor inside here for adding some reflections. And then I can see exactly what that looks like as a ray traced example. To kind of finish this guy off. Okay, there's your final bags with chickens inside. Okay, it's just building that image. So I'll open the floor for any questions that you might have or anything that you might want to see again. These are all the shrink tools that we can effectively use within iC3D and generate. As I said, we want the most accurate shrink tools and most comprehensive shrink tools and shrink tools that nobody else actually has. So thank you for listening and thank you for your patience.
Thank you for the nice demonstration of the application. Still no question specifically in chat. Well, there is one about setting up lighting and making your own lighting scene. That doesn't specifically relate to the shrink tools. If you want to show it though,
Yep.
that would be nice.
Yeah, actually I could show you a nice little demo to set up like a very basic or an industry standard kind of agency shot. Let me just grab something to show you guys that. Do it with a shampoo bottle is always a nice one to show.
Maybe as an addition to that, I've struggled myself in the past with creating nice shadows in the ray traced image, because of course when you're using the OpenGL and you use the special effects drop shadow thing,
yep,
that looks nice in the preview, but when you ray trace it, those shadows aren't actually there.
Yep, just depends. So, generally, probably because there's too much light in the scene. What I'm about to show you will actually show you how you can manipulate those shadows as well. So I can answer both those questions in one. So this product here has been okay, it's been nicely lit. There's about 3 different lights in the scene. So I'm going to start by showing you this interactive light map editor and how to build up a very quick lighting environment using to create 2 highlights down the front of the bottle, which would be a typical agency Photoshop shoot environment. Okay, so I'm going to dump the lights that are in here by creating a new environment. Obviously it goes black because you see here in my lighting environment, all it is a black room at the moment with no light getting in there at all. So we can quickly come in here, we can add some lights in here. As you can see, it starts to come alive again. The lights here at the moment are around the back of the object. I'll just make sure that it's set to 0. Yeah, so if I set this to 0 and 0, I know that that light is now hitting the back of that object. That's why that shadow's coming forward, okay? Obviously, I want to manipulate this a little bit further. We can have circular or rectangular lights very quickly and easily. I can change the angle of that light to make it a bit larger. I can also change the intensity of that light. At the moment, it's 75% opacity. I'm going to make it 100% to make it more intense. Okay. And then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to position it. So I can either drag that into position where I want it. Using these sliders here, I can physically just pick it up and move it around. So as soon as I let go of it, it will move it to that position in real time. Okay, and you'll see the shadow moving around with that as well. So here, I know the location of this. I'm going to move it vertically up by 21 degrees, minus 120 to the left here. Okay, I can then also duplicate a light once I'm happy with it. So I can have one on the other side. You see the highlight already hitting the front of that object. It's places it exactly on top of that one. So all I have to do is move my second one to the opposite side. Okay. And then effectively I've got a nice, nicely lit scene of almost. I can then move those lights using a shortcut, keyboard shortcut, my S key. You see there on the OpenGL view on the left, you can see where the lights are hitting. I just want to nudge that around a little bit. And then I'd have my nicely lit with two lights. Okay, now maybe if I want to soften this off, I can use my background as my ambient light, okay? So we can use our background color here, which I like to use sometimes as an ambient light by adding a gradient background. Okay, so we can have a vertical gradation. Okay, so it softens the whole thing off. Obviously, it was quite nicely lit before. Here is my dynamic range, which is the global intensity setting for all of the lights that are in here. So I'm just going to nudge that back to 4 so we can see the edges. But you'll see there the gold effects as the lights are hitting it. And then to answer the other question, so you see there it's a very nicely lit object. To be fair, I can change those highlights to suit. Maybe I want further highlights down the bottle. Then I can move the lights to do that. Obviously, it's going to blow it out. It's not quite what I want. So I want them really to sit kind of here. Okay. And then if I grab these, if I want to change, obviously, the position of the shadow, I move the light around the bottle. If I want to change the length for that shadow, then obviously I need to make one of these lights a little bit smaller. So if I go back to my lighting, I can select which one I want. And then I can just make the angle of that half the size. And then effectively, I have half the shadow or more subtle shadow on that side. Okay, here's there, it's just very subtle. Obviously I can bring it back in bit by bit. As you can see there, it's slightly longer now. And then obviously I can match it back up to the other one.
Okay, cool. So the problem that I had with my shadows was probably that I was using one of the default environments that has like 7, 8 lights in.
Yeah, it just kills the shadows. Obviously, it's like if you grab an object with a torch and then you point it at that object, you see the shadow cast. And as you move that torch around, it's like a clock. Yeah, so it's the same inside here. So yeah, less lights is pretty much what you need.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So I haven't seen in that time any more questions come into the chat. So I think I'll thank you for the cafe. We stayed nice within our time frame as well. So again, I would like to remind everybody that 2 weeks from now, we have the last Creative Edge iC3D session on automation. Next week, something about Caldera RIP. Thank you all for attending. As usual, these will be available on YouTube in the near future. So if you want to review something, you'll be able to find it there, and you'll also get an email or a social media message when those are uploaded. So thanks again, and I'll see everybody in the next one.